Hey ninjas, what's up? Welcome to the Ninjababes podcast. I have a full house here today. I don't always have 4 people on, but today I do, and I'm super pumped to have everyone here. If you're on YouTube, you can see us all. So we've got from my left here, Chris Wilczewski, Michelle Warnky Buurma. Wow.
Buurma, you're good.
Of course, myself, and then Mary Leighton, looking at my screen all around. So it's awesome to have you guys on today. Just a little quick intro. So Michelle has been a part of the NNL board for a number of years now. I think it's close to 7 years, right? From the very beginning. Chris, of course, as many of us look to him as the leader of the NNL, but he is the NNL board president. He's also the operations manager of everything National Ninja League. So this really just kind of throws us into today's topic. We are here talking to the National Ninja League. Of course, familiar face, Mary Leighton. As many of you recall, Mary and I just recently, a few weeks ago, gave a seminar at the National Ninja League World Championship, talking all about females in ninja and what it looks like competing on the same course as the guys. And we know we've done that historically, and we kind of were proposing a lot of ideas of should we split courses, what might be a benefit or not a benefit to switching, and what should we do moving forward. And so we were looking at a lot of NinjaWorks data. That was a huge discussion. There's a lot of there's a few episodes relating to that topic. If you want to go back, you can click on the links below or up above to see the presentation itself where we're going through NinjaWorks data and really talking about everything. There's also a recent video, I'll also link it above, of the feedback episode that Mary and I put together just last week, talking through all of the feedback that we've received from the seminar. We've gotten so many emails and questions and thoughts and DMs and all these things. So we really went through and tried to cover everything that we've received. So today we're here with Chris and Michelle. They're going to come on and discuss all of the changes that are taking place for next season. So I know a letter has gone out to kind of like gym owners and the main staff at gyms, so I'm sure they can explain a little bit more, but we are coming to learn what these changes are for season 7. And so we're really excited to have them on today and talk about everything and ask them all of our questions. So what's up? Thanks for being here, guys.
So the changes that you talked about, it's actually a relatively simple change when it comes to our rule book. And it's actually funny, we were talking earlier and it kind of became evident that you guys weren't aware that we initially had changes for females in our rulebook because it was kind of like an underutilized section of our rulebook. And what the rule used to say was that adjustments to the course for female athletes may be made at the course designer's discretion, but the changes that could be made were only trampoline heights and distances or time limits. And that's a rule that we've actually had in place since 2017. It's been sitting in there for a while. But this season, we went ahead and we opened it up, and we actually struck that second part from the rule. And now it just reads that pretty much changes can be made at the course designer's discretion, so they could make any change if they wanted to. This is a rule that came with a lot of thought and debate over the years. It's not something that we just decided this season. We're just like, hey, let's just do it because why not? Let's see what happens. It's something that our boards discussed many years and seen many different sides of things. And Michelle, you could probably talk a little bit about the early days of it and how we would kind of poll different top female athletes and talk about their opinions on it, and maybe kind of give us a jump start on like where the debate started and what it was like back in the early days.
Yeah, there's so many thoughts along with that, but it is such a sensitive topic and a hard, challenging topic. And one thing, as we dive into this, I just want everyone to keep in mind, like, women's bodies are made so specially. We're able to do things like give birth to kids, and do just incredible things. And so I think as we keep that in mind as discussing through this stuff, that's really helpful. But yeah, I feel like most women, when they come to the sport of ninja, most women my age at least, when they came in, they were the ones that, like, they were the girl hanging out with all the guys, and they were the one trying to keep up with all the guys. They were the one trying to prove themselves and show that they could hang with the guys. And so I came into ninja more with that mentality and wanting to, keep up, stay strong, do all those things. And so initially I was like, no changes, don't want that at all. that was before National Ninja League was even started. Because at that time, there was only a few gyms in the country, which is crazy to think now. But then as I progressed in the sport and as the sport grew, I felt so different being a female in ninja versus being a female in rock climbing, being a female in track, because it was just because there were no changes between the guys and the girls things. In track, they have different hurdle heights, they have different distances or different things they do. And just to highlight the different strengths of the different competitors. And so for me personally, as I went on this path, I started to realize we need to consider adjustments. But at that point, we had a lot of new women coming in the sport who were up-and-coming stars. And, for them, they were in that first stage of like, no, we want to prove ourselves against the guys. We don't want any changes. And so, we talked about it on the board. And I was one of the few on the board who really wanted those changes just from my own personal experience. Everyone has a different experience through it. But then over the years, I feel like more and more women have also switched over to, no, we don't really care about proving ourselves against the guys now. Like, we have our own division. We're competing against other top women, and we want to see a good amount of success. We want to encourage more women into the sport. We want to have a lot of fun and challenge ourselves. And those are all things you can do even with a different course or a slightly adjusted course, similar to climbing. Climbing was super amazing to watch in the Olympics, or I love watching climbing anywhere. And they have different routes, guys and girls. So it's been cool to see the discussion continue to progress, and I'm excited where it'll go.
So I'm going to add a little bit to Michelle, what you just finished up with about the discussion about it, to kind of talk about from a board perspective or an organization perspective, kind of how we come to these decisions. Because like I mentioned earlier, it's not something that we just kind of like think about overnight. It's something that we've been talking about for the past 5 years. And kind of the way that things flow or decisions flow at the National Ninja League is it kind of starts at the community level, whether that's the athletes competing, parents, coaches, administrators. It starts with their experiences at our events. And our whole philosophy is to try to provide the best possible experience to everybody that's partaking in the National Ninja League. We want to deliver the most possible value, and whether that's for the athletes that are on the course or for the administrators that are running the events, they should be excited to be a part of the organization and feel good when they go through that organization. And when they don't have a good experience, and when something negative happens or something that doesn't quite work out the way that they thought it should, we want to hear that feedback. We want to take that feedback and make changes. And we feel like that's something that over the years has been so important to us, especially with a lot of the board members being athletes and administrators in the ninja community. We feel like it's so important for us to grow a sport in a direction that we would want it to be moving if we were the young athletes of today. And the way that we kind of take that information and process it is we start with the community. And we listen to their feedback, whether it's through the surveys that we send out. We put a huge emphasis on that survey data, or emails that we're receiving from parents, from coaches, because people will email us directly and tell us about event experiences and how they thought it should be, or different ways that it could be. And we take all of those things to heart, and we try to listen to it as best we can. And then what we do is we have our staff, our regional managers. They're the ones that are kind of like overseeing each of the regions, whether that's Northeast, Midwest, West Coast. And what they do is they compile a report every year that's based off of the feedback that they heard from their region and from their experiences. Because it's National Ninja League, like, we cover a huge ground. It's like we are East Coast to West Coast. We have global international partners as well. And the needs of the New England community might be vastly different than the needs of the West Coast community. And what happens is these regional managers take that feedback from each of their regions and compile it into a report that I then review with the team, and then we kind of talk through and discuss potential solutions. How do we solve this? How do we adjust the rule book to fix this potential issue that we're seeing? And I know that it's not related to the female changes that we're talking about, but maybe a clear, easy example that we saw was early days of Ninja rules. When the rules walkthrough happened, it could take an hour. It could take an hour and a half because the rules were so complex and so hard to follow and understand. And we got a lot of feedback from our youth athletes and our parents that, our 6-year-olds or 7-year-olds were completely forgetting the course by the time the rules were done because it's an hour and a half in. So what we did is we looked at solutions to solve it, and we tried to come up with rules that make sense, that are easy to follow, like platform to platform. And then having that allowed us to say, okay, well, now you have a time limit. You have to explain this in 35 minutes or less. Otherwise, you're in violation of our policy. And it's like that feedback and progression of change that kind of gets discussed and brought about, through everybody in the, on the staff talking about these changes. And then what happens is I take that report and I bring it to the board. And the board, this experienced group of ninjas in the community that have been working together for, 7 years now, will take that and they'll look for holes in it too. They'll say like, oh, can we actually implement this? Is this something that's going to work? Is it going to present an issue here? Or, what about this that we didn't think of? And then we tweak it, refine it, and then we end up getting together and voting on it. So it's like that whole process where you go from the community and, up the chain to get to the leaders in the community to make informed decisions based off of the data that's coming into us is how we make these changes. And that's how we ended up coming up with the changes for the female athletes. It's we heard a lot of feedback in the community about the courses and the females on the courses and how they wanted to potentially experience something different. And then when we started pulling back the layers and looking at some of the NinjaWorks data or some of the survey data, we could see that there's definitely a demand or an increase in desire to see potentially different courses for female athletes. But like Michelle mentioned, it's one of those things that it's going to be interesting to kind of see how things play out. Because the rule book, in terms of how it's implemented, is deliberately, intentionally very open-ended. It's like it's allowing the ability to make changes, but it's not restricting the changes. It's not restricting what the facilities need to do in terms of marketing the changes. It kind of gives them an open floor to kind of interpret it. And what will likely happen is we'll closely monitor it and kind of see like, okay, which changes were well received, which changes in the community did the community respond positively to, and is there a way that we should take that and maybe implement it into a rule? Like, is it enough support, or maybe the opposite of support? Maybe enough people got mad at a certain particular change or style of change that just didn't work well. And, is that enough to warrant us creating a rule that says, okay, some changes are good, but not these changes. These changes, every event got scored horribly, so don't do those changes, otherwise you're going to run a bad event that the community doesn't want. And I've actually already had people reach out to me about potential options and ways to do it, which is kind of cool. And usually when we have stuff kind of like these suggestions, we might throw them out as like a best practices or like a guideline that we send out to facilities. It might not be a rule, but like one of the feedback things that I got was from a New England athlete that was saying they would really like to see course changes that allowed for the female athletes to still do the course the same way that the guys are doing the course, but also offer kind of like an alternative path. So it's like you kind of have like the option of like a helper hold, or you could hit a 16-foot lachette. I don't know. I have no idea what these kids are doing these days. but it's like those suggestions. There's like that's some pretty solid feedback, and that might be something that we throw into like a best practices document. But overall, what we have now, we're excited for what the community is going to do and take with this. And we're prepared to monitor that feedback. So I mentioned earlier the surveys that we send out at the end of every comp. So we've already designed and prepped them for this season, and they have 3 questions that pertain specifically to the female course changes. The first one being the obvious, were there, course changes for females? Because we don't have a review process for courses. We have a lot of training, studying, exam stuff that kind of sets the guidelines and the tones for courses, but we don't actually review them ourselves. So we need to know whether or not the changes were made. And then if the changes were made, we need to know how the community felt about them. Were the adjustments too easy? Were they just right? Were they too hard? And then to dial it a little bit more, we kind of want to know the quality of it, because you could have an adjustment that felt just right, but the quality of it was off for one reason or another. So we're going to take that and combine that with the comments that we have in the open-ended section to try to figure out and dial exactly what these changes could look like and how they're going to impact the community and how the community responds to it. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, we are here to try to build and improve the community and make things better for everybody. And if we're doing something wrong, we want to know. And if we're doing something right, we also want to know so we can keep doing it. So I'm rambling a little bit. So Michelle, if you want to jump in and talk about your process or experience with the whole flow, feel free.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to add, because I don't think most people, I mean, there were some people around during this time, but like early in the days, there wasn't even separate divisions, It was literally everyone competing together. So even separating the two divisions was a huge debate and discussion of like, should we do this? Should we not? All these things. And I definitely remember, discussions on the board about prize money. Do you, before the division thing even, like, do you award a female and a male prize? Do you award just a female prize, or just a top prize and not a female prize? So it is really cool to see how far it has come. And I feel like there's so many sports that as they're going through the process, like Chris said, feedback's a huge thing. And that's our main goal, is we want the sport to grow. We want it to improve and to be a good experience. And so that's our main desire. And that's, everyone on the board is someone, like, they're all people I trust and that have been in Ninja for years and years and years. And so to be able to share thoughts and feedback that we've all been given at our gyms, and then to listen to others and talk. I love talking with NNL board just because we're able to share ideas and brainstorm and all those things. And take a lot of just thoughts from the community. So that's our goal.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, you're bringing up so many important points that I know Mary and I had been thinking about. Like, these are great topics to talk about. I guess one overall question I have is, like, you brought up the point of that progression of having different divisions, even for male and female, and then, of course, age groups. Do you feel like these changes moving forward are going to be helpful in helping Ninja become its own sport? Because I know that's the constant conversation, is like, how are we moving forward as a sport? And kind of with that and adjacent, some of the feedback that we've heard from people who are not too keen on changes has been like, well, if you don't want to do an NNL, then just go do a different comp. Like, why are you going to change ours? Kind of a thing. Like, go join a different league. And so I guess I just wanted to pick your brains a little bit about, like, if we're trying to move forward with this common goal of, like, make Ninja a sport, what does that really mean? And how do you see some of these changes as moving in that direction?
Yeah, so making Ninja a sport is definitely a huge topic that can go so many different ways, because there's so many different visions for what a sport actually is. Like, you could be talking, okay, this is the professional route where you have athletes that are getting paid to do the sport. You could have the Olympic route where it's recognized as an official Olympic sport by the regulating bodies. You could be looking at it from a scholastic level where it's at the point where athletes are earning scholarships to go to different schools to compete in the Ninja sense, or in Ninja as a sport. And since there's so many different pathways for it, it makes it a challenging topic, because there's so many different viewpoints for what's important. We recently surveyed the community, and it was pretty much like a 33% split in terms of, where the future of the sport lie. Was it in the Olympics? Was it in the professional realm? Was it in the scholastic? And it's like everyone seems to have their own differing opinion of where that goes. But I think ultimately, no matter what route you take, the things that become apparent and obvious in terms of, creating or making the sport is building a solid foundation, because whether you want this to be an Olympic level sport or a professional sport or in scholastics, is like you need to have solid rule book, solid regulations, solid standards, and really well-defined parameters or box for like what ninja is as a sport. And it's interesting because ninja is so open-ended in the sense because it's so young, and there's so many different organizations that are trying to do so many different things with it, because there's the traditional aspect of, or at least what we refer to as the traditional aspect of competitive ninja, which focuses on doing these elite challenging courses where like there's a lot of mental prep and a lot of talent and a lot of well-rounded training that goes into trying to complete a course without failing it. And like that in itself is totally different than the mental aspect of doing a skills competition or doing something almost like a rock climbing route, where it's like you have a problem, or a course in ninja where you attack it multiple times and just try to fight through the technique, or skills where you're trying to refine or gain more efficiency. It's a totally different aspect of ninja than just the traditional course sense. So it's like we're still kind of figuring out as a community where we want it to go, and what is going to ultimately platform the sport. And I think there's a lot of different views on ninja, because there's definitely a desire for more obstacle time. And one of the things that's always fascinated me about ninja is this whole aspect of the one and done format, where you're competing as a ninja, and if you're competing at an elite level where you're not running out the course, or you're in one of these competitions where you're over water, where it's like you could fly to a different part of the country, do one obstacle, and then head home. And it's just like, where's the value in that? It's like, I didn't get to really show off or showcase my ninja skills in the sports side of things. And one of the things that we do with the league is try to provide more value to the sport. And I think that's what a lot of the other leagues are trying to do, is find ways to provide more value to the athletes, so that, it's not just flying across the country and falling on one thing and then going home. It's in and out worlds where you're competing in multiple skills, you're doing multiple stages, you're going through a whole process. And I think that over time, the organizations that are listening to community and responding to those feedback, and really trying to provide that value to the athletes, will be the ones that are defining what the sport is and what it looks like in the future, because ultimately it's a sport that's driven by the community. And the more value the athletes get out of competing, then the more likely it is to see more athletes in that system, and to see more athletes competing and continuing to do the sport. So in terms of us defining it, now to bring it back, hopefully full circle, is I think our goal has always been to try to provide the most value and the most clear, consistent, and fair rules, because that's always been super important to us, is just making sure that we can provide a lot of value to our athletes, a lot of value to our community, and to make sure that the rules are fair and consistent across the board, so athletes are able to compete in a way that really, selects the best possible athletes from our competitions. Michelle, you want to jump in and add, where you think the sport is going?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I feel like you said it well. I think there's so much to figure out. It is just so new. I started rock climbing back when I was in like second grade, and at that point, a gym had just opened, and it's been cool to see their progression and the progression of rock climbing over the years. And it's been super exciting to now see ninja and its progression. It's a totally different thing, from 8 years ago when I met Chris. And so I definitely, again, I think it comes back to like the community. And then also I'm an obstacle course racer, and a big thing with the obstacle course racing world is you want to have both elite athletes, and you also want to have, anyone that wants to try it to come out. And I think ninja is similar. you want to have that elite level so that those people who are really talented and really hardworking and dedicated, they have that ability to go really far and do some really amazing things, cool opportunities. But you also want it to be able to be something that someone can be a weekend warrior, or someone can, do it after their day job and just enjoy it. We have tons of people at our gym that they have a full day of work, and so they get 1-2 hours in at the gym a few times a week, and they love it, And so just listening to what people want and helping work with all the different groups, the elite as well as the regular people that have normal jobs.
I'm gonna piggyback off of that, Michelle, and talk about that group of ninjas that are there to kind of like the weekend warriors, I think what you call them, the ones that are there just like having fun, doing it once a week, doing it kind of casually. And when I mentioned the growth of the sport, I definitely looked at the top level, but you're absolutely right, because that beginner level, that intro level is so important. And when you look at all other sports, they all create a pyramid where it's the base level is the biggest pool of athletes, and that's the ones that are beginner. They're getting into it casually, that are just enjoying it, that are watching it on the weekends, and casually doing it every now and then. And that's why we developed the RNL program, because we needed a feeder system to get athletes into it, to get them started and do it in a more friendly way, because it's crazy to see the progression of the community and like the talent level, like where it's at now. Like these ninjas that are in the teen division that have been competing for the past 5 years, 6 years, they're so good, and they're so far ahead. It's like if you went back in time 5 years, like you could just be generally athletic or pick it up relatively quickly and be kind of like in the mix with like these athletes. But like at this point, like some of the top athletes are so far ahead that you need a new system to kind of feed athletes into the competitive scene that's new, and to focus on that in terms of growing the sport, to just get more people in general involved, and to show people that this is something awesome that they can do. Is you're totally right there. It's something that is a huge focus of any sport.
And one thing I want to add with that really quick, just an experience from obstacle course racing. They do also, different races allow different things, but there are sometimes adjustments for the pro women and the pro men. And it doesn't take anything away from the women, like the women who win or are podium, they're still super pumped. It doesn't matter that it's a slightly different course. And I think that's, again, something that you want to see success. You want to see people, on Ninja, you want to see people hit buzzers and things like that. So I understand that there's hesitation, and I just really encourage anyone that is pretty against it to just give it a try. And ultimately, it's not necessarily about how we each personally feel about it. It's, does it help grow the sport or not?
I think that's a great suggestion, Michelle, is to just give it a try, take a second. I know one of the athletes that reached out to me that was against course changes for females. I suggested that, like, hey, probably right, but give it a try. Go try a comp where they make changes, and then send us fire in the survey and be like, no, it still stinks, I still don't want it, but give it a try. Just try to be open to it, and then let us know that you still don't like it and we should look at changing it. But definitely encouraging them to at least come into it with an open mind.
Yes, well said. Yeah, just to jump in, I think you're absolutely right. Just kind of going back to everything that just went on there. That was great back and forth. But yeah, like looking at how we've progressed as a sport is so cool, and to think about the future. And so I really value your opinions. It's cool to see like where I jumped into the sport 5 years ago, and even just like how much it's changed since then. And now to be in this position talking to all of you about this sport that's living, breathing thing that's been growing, it's really cool. But coming back now to what you just spoke about, Chris, giving it a chance this season and just seeing what can happen. Because I think as I've been talking to different athletes in the community, it's been this hesitation of, well, the rules or the changes are so open-ended. What if gyms just come up with really terrible ideas and we hate it? And it's like there's not enough guidance to make it something that's constructive. And so I think I know you kind of mentioned this before of maybe there could be some more guidelines put out, as gyms do have good ideas and things like that. But I guess from an athlete, a female athlete perspective myself, and I think Mary feels the same way, is how else can there be good ways to kind of give some good guidance? Because, in the seminars, we heard like a gamut of feedback of like gyms who've had some type of competition where they did have an alternative route for the females. And sometimes they're okay. And sometimes it just felt like, oh, this is the really easy version. That's for the girls. Like, it just didn't feel good. It felt like a slap in the face. Like, oh, you need a 12-foot wall with like a really big run up, but the boys don't even need a run up, and they could do the 14. So it's like, how do we find a good balance, and how else can we provide constructive guidelines that will help females feel like they're still being heard, and like gyms have some more guidance? Because some there were a lot of coaches and course designers who came to us at the end of the seminars, and they were like, we still don't know what to do, even if we tried to implement a change. Like, what does that mean? Like, help us out. So do you have any other, I know I'm going in circle, but I know Chris, you had mentioned about giving guidelines. How else might we give some good advice?
So I would say there's really two ways to look at this, which is like the before the comp and then after the comp. After the comp, we send everybody all the gyms their survey data. So like if they made a change that was too easy, something like throwing the wall in and it felt like an insult to the women, like they will get that through the survey feedback and they can make the change for future events. But obviously that's not what we want. We want to have a good event the first time. When it comes to having a good event the first time, we will send out some like little packets that say like, these seem to be things that, people are responding positively to. We also have a good network of other facilities or other organizations that have done female course changes before. We have a great relationship with the guys and girls over at UNX. So we'll be getting some feedback from them as well to kind of figure out, what went well for them, so we can kind of build that list. But ultimately, what I would say, and this probably applies to all, course design, because you can make the same mistake for any age division or gender, and just poorly design a course or throw an obstacle in there that's just like just not in the right category at all. And it really comes down to testing the course and testing it with the appropriate age group and gender. So if you are going to make female course changes as a course designer, I would say the most important thing to do is to find female testers that are willing to come help out, test your course, and give you feedback, and then listen to the feedback. So, if they're telling you that this is too easy or too challenging, take that and make sure that you take it to heart and, make those changes or adjustments, because ultimately the ones that are doing it are going to be the ones that know whether or not this is appropriately scaled or not. And I can say, as having a role in the course designing process, I personally have I'm not a child or a or a female athlete, so it's like when it comes to like knowing what's appropriate for them, like I have to listen to what they're telling me, like, oh, this is too challenging, this feels right. It's so definitely listen to your testers. They play such a vital role in the course building process, and it's important that you have them and that you take the time to actually test your course and to know what's appropriate and what's not appropriate.
I was thinking too, like, yes, course testing is hugely important, but I was also wondering about if a gym decides to go ahead and make a separate course or whatever their change is going to be. It doesn't necessarily have to be that every single division in that competition has to have the same change. Is that true, or is that not true?
This is true. So you could have a course change for the Masters female division, but the elite females could have the same course as the male females. So it's like, again, it's open-ended. It allows them to kind of make changes where they see fit. That being said, it obviously needs to be consistent for, like, if you make a change for the Masters female division, it needs to be for all of the Masters females. You couldn't be like, well, wave 1, it didn't work out so well, so we're gonna get rid of that change for wave 2. No, I can't. But but yeah, the idea is to have the ability to kind of change between divisions, and that's one of the things that we saw with our data that we pulled is we saw different course clear rates for different age groups, and I think it was up until mature kids, so like kids and mature kids, they both had pretty consistent clear rates for courses with the males, and then preteen, I think it like maybe cut it in half or dropped down. And then as you got older in the divisions, then you started to see more of a change. And I know Kara and Mary, you two did some data and research on the physiological differences between male and females and the effects that puberty have. And you can definitely see some correlation in terms of course clear rate and when athletes go through puberty. So it might be something that you see in the older age divisions, but maybe not so much in the younger. But obviously we're sending all that information out to course designers so they can make informed decisions.
Gym owners and regions they know their athletes, like they know for the most part like who's going to show up to these events. And so I do think this still gives the gym the ownership and creativity to say like, okay, these divisions we're still keeping it the same, and then these we're going to make this change, whatever. I just think it's still flexible enough that we can see a real change, but we could also see where changes might not be necessary. So
yeah, no, just real quick, one thing as we talk about, I mean, when I first started, again, I would go to a gym and it'd be like 40 guys and me. And I would literally drag a friend with me and they would just, sit on their phone most of the time or whatever. And so it's been so cool to see, the amount of women come out. And I think one benefit that this brings to the sport for women is kind of like Chris was saying, is it does involve the women in the course design more. You have to have that female feedback. And I know for us as a gym, like we want to have females a part of either designing or testing the course. And that's valuable feedback. And now even more so, it's really valuable feedback. And then just encouragement too. A lot of the people designing courses have been doing it a long time and I feel like are relatively open to the community. And so, I feel like as long as the community is sharing their thoughts or the, people going to that gym are sharing their thoughts with both the NNL and that gym, the course designers, I mean, they've already done such a good job. I think they'll adjust well.
Yeah, lots of interesting thoughts pop up in this whole discussion, especially like with testing and having female testers and just the importance of listening to that. I know it's definitely been my experience over the last year and a half or so as I've been more involved in the testing and the design process at UO. There are definitely times where I'm like, guys, this is too hard for the females, and it's really hard to adjust to that. It's really hard to take that feedback and be like, oh, an obstacle is too hard, we should make it easier. Because I think that sometimes there's that mentality that like the course should be super hard. Like you don't want people to clear the course. Like, and that's kind of like, I would say more of like the earlier thought process with most course design was that, okay, all my buddies are coming and I'm designing this course, they're never going to beat it. But there's definitely been like a progression, but I think that we're still kind of learning how to work with that progression. Before we move on to the next question, I actually had kind of a thought. Super, super happy to hear that there's going to be feedback in the surveys about changes for females. So I just had one kind of question on that. Are we going to be asking what type of changes were made? Like, was it a time difference? Was it the same course? They had more time? Was it a totally separate course or easier obstacles? And then kind of piggybacking on that, the gym owner here, Eric Mata, he came to me and he was like, okay, here's the changes that NNL is making, and we're going to do it right. But we don't really know what right is, right? So I was kind of wondering, is it possible or would it be possible that as we are gathering this information, as the competitions happen over the course of the season, would it be possible to kind of make that information available, kind of like the guidelines that you were talking about setting out, but like as this is evolving, as the sport is getting more accustomed to this idea, as gyms are trying out more and different things, can we get that info out to gym owners and course designers so that, they have more of a framework to work with than now you can make these changes?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the things that we're partnering with NinjaWorks on this season is trying to provide more course-specific feedback to all of our event coordinators. So we have all this information. Like we can tell you which regions have more grip obstacle fails or balance obstacle fails. We can tell you, the average course time that different regions set out. We can tell you the average fail time on courses. And one of our big goals this season is to get all of that information out and in the hands of facility owners and event coordinators and people that are making the decisions, because we believe that you'll see a correlation between longer events that put athletes on more obstacles, or better quality events where the athletes are getting, to a more appropriate fail point, and, the overall event feel or rating, if you will. So we can definitely add in things like, what course changes were made for females, how it looked, how they went, and make sure that we get that information out. And not only get that information out, because you bring up a good point, it's one thing to get it after the fact, but work on trying to get it into the hands of facility owners before their event even, so that as they're thinking about the process, they can see what other course designers did and how it could potentially impact their competition.
Yeah, that makes me really excited. I think the ultimate comp is in November, so I'm like, I want this information before we do it. So I have a quick question about Worlds, actually. So speaking to the fact that we can make changes now, you can do longer time limits. In my discussions with a lot of elite females, when we talk about, like, do you want a separate course, do you not? A lot of them are on the train where they want the same course, but they're okay with a different time limit. And we saw that play out at Worlds. And, I got to be there for the whole week. I got to see every single age division go through, and I felt it was a very appropriate change. But I am curious, that was the only division that we saw a time change for. So what drove that decision? What was the thought process? Was it an NNL decision? Was it a center court decision? Just kind of give us the lowdown on that process.
Yeah, so that was one that I personally was really excited to see in terms of a change, because I felt like it played really well, especially for that course. And let me back up. The decision was made by the course design team. So every year, the NNL kind of puts together a course design team that consists of a lead and other people that kind of support the course team, and those people, that kind of group, will kind of make the decisions on the course. They'll be the ones testing it, kind of going through everything. And this year, one of the things that we realized, that we kind of recognize with the course, is the course design. The way that this particular course was designed, with like lots of big laches, big kind of like grabby moves that maybe required like a little bit wider wingspan. The moves for a male body type, a typical male body type, speaking generally, tended to be a little bit more on the easier side, and most of them could do it either by linking or in single swings. But then when you put a smaller athlete or a smaller potential female frame on there, then all of a sudden the moves become slightly more challenging and more technical, and it almost changes the dynamic of the course completely, where it's like some of the elite male athletes especially could be looking at that stage one and looking at it as like, this is a speed course, but some of the elite female athletes could be looking at it as like a more technical course. And we realized through some of our testing with our different athletes, it's a lot of the males were flying through it with relative ease, so that we needed kind of like that tight time limit to keep the prestige of clearing stage one intact, as well as keeping our time and schedule on track. Because one of the things I feel like people don't realize is like the course designers work so hard to calculate how many athletes are going to get through, and we have this thing that we kind of call like a target clear percentage, where like we're trying to hit around 20% for stage one, because that kind of puts us in a safe margin where it's like you're a little if you're a little off and like a little too low, you still have a decent number of clears, and if you're a little too high, you still don't go over the 35% that we take on anyway, because in terms of scheduling, there's so many logistics that go in behind the scenes, whether that's like permits, occupancy permits, staffing costs, like all those things we need to factor in and make sure that we don't go over schedule. So it's like we're trying to dial that, and when we're looking at our males that are flying through this course, it's like, okay, like we need to have a seriously tight time limit in order to make sure that we don't have, 100, 200 males go through, and then we're just, sitting there all afternoon, and, the inspecting officers knocking on the door being like, hey, you guys were supposed to be out of here an hour ago. What are you guys doing? It's like, they don't care that we got the time limits wrong. So we tried really hard to dial these courses. And when we were going through the testing, we realized that, the females were able to get it, the females that were using for the testing were able to get it and get through the course. They just needed time for an extra swing here, or an extra second to gather there, and really we felt like the course would be most appropriate if we took that time limit and we just slightly dialed it back for the female athletes. And we ultimately think that it worked out pretty well. We got a couple of female athletes that ended up getting right to the end there and almost had it. So we feel like we were pretty close in terms of getting female athletes through, which is what we want. We want everyone to succeed. We want everyone to be happy and to feel great about themselves going through the competition. But obviously, we still want to have that level of prestige. But ultimately, it was a decision that was made by the course team after months of testing and dialing and looking at that particular course and saying, this particular course we think is doable. But a few extra seconds would make it really doable. So.
Yeah, and something to add with that, 2 thoughts is a few years ago, season 3 maybe? I don't know which one. I was doing the course, and I know several others, we all got to the last obstacle and timed out. And I think, like in that example, if there had been 10, 15 more seconds, you might have had 5 female clears going on to stage 2. And, that's something that people want to see. They want to see a female clear. And, and obviously we still want to do it in whatever time limit we're given. But as a course designer, you want to set people up for success, the right amount of success. And then another thing that I feel like the NNL has done really well of taking input is, back in the early seasons, if you didn't make it past stage 1, you were done. And so, all of us females that were really close to stage 2 and clearing stage 1, like, all right, you're done. That's it. And so it's really cool now that you do have the opportunity to still get to try stage 2, to still get to try stage 3, even if you didn't quite make it, if you're still in that top percentage. So I think, again, just taking that feedback and trying to make it the best experience for people while also keeping that high level in there as well.
I had to sit down at that competition because I failed the first obstacle, going back to season 3 in Ninja Quest. So it's good change.
You did Ninja during season 3? I really didn't even know that. I didn't.
I kind of did Ninja during season 3. I qualified because I cleared the first half of the first obstacle at a competition, and everyone was already qualified at that point. So they're like, "You're going to finals." I was like, "What? Cool." It was a phenomenal experience. I loved it. So I was happy with it. But yeah, there've been some good changes since then. So
I was going to say, I think these changes will really go right in hand with allowing girls to get further on the course and not qualifying just at the first obstacle. But so the next question I had was, when ninjas go to sign up for a competition, if it's a female who's wondering, like, oh, I wonder what this gym is going to do, will they know ahead of time just by looking at the sign up that, oh, there's going to be a separate course, or this gym is doing nothing, it's going to be the same? Is there going to be any sort of warning?
So right now we don't have any parameters in place for requiring gyms to promote that they're making female adjustments or female course changes. But going back to that best practices, since this is such a big change that different parts of the community feel strongly about, we think that it's important that they market that. So we're definitely going to encourage facilities to market if they are going to be doing course changes for females, because it might affect people that sign up. People might be more excited to sign up. They might be like, "This is awesome. I want to get an opportunity to try this." So we're definitely going to encourage it, but no, it's not required.
I guess right along with that, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe for this past season, it was only required for the regional competitions for gyms to show their courses like to someone from NNL to like approve the obstacles. Is that something that you've considered to look at the female version of the courses to make sure that they seem like comparable, or is it something you've talked about at all?
No, it's actually, it is kind of funny because I feel like most people see the NNL as this like huge colossal organization. It's like most of it's like there's really only like 4 or 5 of us behind the scenes that are making all the magic happen. And I'm pretty sure every one of us has another full-time job that we do. So in terms of bandwidth, it's not something that I think that we can accommodate, which isn't necessarily the best answer when it comes to this. But ultimately, we did for the regionals, we reviewed all the courses. And even that was a lot in terms of the extra strain that put on the team, and it kept us from doing other potential stuff. We feel confident in our course designers. They've been building courses for 7 seasons now, most of them, and they've been going through different trainings, and we provide new materials to them. We provide constant feedback to them. We feel pretty confident that they're going to be getting the courses right, and especially if we can continue to provide the resources to them, we feel good about their ability to get it right and get it dialed. And if they don't, we understand that this is a learning process, and we're going to take all the feedback and we're going to improve upon it and make it better in the future.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And yeah, I think it is important for people to realize NNL isn't like this huge organization. A lot of people think Ninjababes is like a whole team of people, and it's really just me. I mean, it's like there's Shell Edge as our social media manager. Mary jumps on the podcast a lot, and we kind of share some of that responsibility. Of course, she was at the seminar, but yeah, I mean, so much of Ninja really is still so small and growing, and people forget. But I mean, here we are making things progress forward. You know what I mean?
Exactly. We hope that one day it's at the point where we all have a full staff, and HR staff, and accounting, and finance, and all different divisions. But right now, it's really just people that are interested in growing the sport that are doing this part-time.
Yeah, I hear you.
I also got to say, I don't know how many courses would actually be turned in, like more than, I don't know, like 12 hours before the event. So that would be tough to do. So just more questions about these changes. So, the change, I think most people think about it in context of like a course, right? So a traditional qualifier. Has there any thought or anything really come up? And I actually don't think this has really come up for us too much, Kara. But what about like skills competitions? Has there been feedback that there are changes that need to happen with that? I feel like skills, I think it's different than a course in some ways, because say it's, most repetitions on a pegboard, that's most repetitions on a pegboard. That's based on your skill level. It's not like a overly easy obstacle for the guys or overly easy obstacle for the girls. So just any thoughts on that as far as how this rule would apply to a skills competition?
Yeah, so right now we have a different set of rules for course and skills, and the only one that we made the change for was the course. So we haven't made any changes for the skills. And it was funny, when I was reading through the list of questions for this podcast, I was like, oh, that's a good point. It's something that we potentially overlooked, because there is definitely an opportunity to have different levels of skills that, the example that you gave with the pegboard, maybe not necessarily applicable, but there are potential other skills where it might be. And right now we don't have a rule for that, but I definitely think that it's something that we can look into, and I can put my team on researching and, getting more data on any type of disparity or gaps or feedback on these skills competitions for the female athletes. But it's exactly stuff like that like we, wasn't on our radar before, but now I assure you it's going to be on our radar. It's going to be something that we're going to be researching and trying to find the best possible path for the community with.
Does anybody else want to add in anything else? I think it's been really awesome hearing everything we've covered so far today. I'm sure we'll have follow-up questions coming in after this episode airs, but is there anything else you feel like we haven't really talked about yet?
I wanted to add one other thing with the previous discussion as far as like the courses and NNL reviewing and things like that. One thing I think is really cool is it does allow each gym to kind of do it, like they're given guidelines, and I mean they have to be approved by the NNL to be an NNL gym in the league. And so there's already a certain level that we're looking for. But beyond that, we want people to be creative. We want people to be able to kind of have their own touch on the event that they're hosting. So I think that's a cool aspect of bringing it out. And again, just like we talked about earlier, share feedback with the gyms you're going to. Yeah, it's great in the survey as well, but like you can I mean, don't try not to like, talk really negatively to someone right after they hosted a long event and they're exhausted. But yeah, whether it's through feedback or just through relationships, I think sharing that feedback's important. But it's like we don't want to make it a cookie cutter thing. We want to allow each gym the ability to kind of make it their own. And the hope too is, regardless of if there's women changes or not in the course, that again people would give it a try, and go try it out, see how it is, and share your feedback.
I'm gonna piggyback off of that, Michelle. I feel like that's been such an organizational thing for us from the start. Because when we founded the league, it's the whole idea was there shouldn't be one person that's like representing everything. Otherwise, like you'll just get NNL president's opinion on what the course changes should look like, and this is how everything should be. It's like the reason why we have a board and why we leave a lot of our rules open ended is because we want to see that creativity in the ninja community, and we think that the more people are trying things, they might think of things that other people didn't. So. Allowing them the freedom and the flexibility is something that's important to us, and you can see it throughout our organization with our rules. We try to get standards, but also leave them open enough that it allows for creativity within those standards.
So speaking to the point about standards, this is something that, Kara and I have talked a lot about as a potential option for making, the courses more standardized. One critique that we got a lot from multiple sources during the seminar was that Ninja is so diverse in its skill sets, right? There's any number of different disciplines or obstacle types that you could train. And you never know what you're going to get at a competition, right? So it can be hard for not just, girls entering high school who don't have a lot of time to know what to train, but just for anyone entering the sport. And, looking to the future of the sport, the teens are constantly innovating. The elites are constantly innovating. There's always new challenges. There's always new, just ridiculous things that you wouldn't even think of. You go on Instagram and you're like, oh my God, who does this and who thought of that? And how can I set it up at my gym so I can try it, right? So, I think I was having a conversation with Matt Bradley, and I said, are course designers really taking note of this? Are they really watching Instagram that much and integrating these skills into courses? And I think we are kind of starting to see, the more that I watch, the elites that I know are coming to a competition at my gym, and I understand what they're capable of, the more I'm like, what can I put in my competition? So in looking to the future of the sport, where we're already at a point that there are so many different skills that anyone could train, and it makes it hard to know what do you need to train in order to be successful. Do you think we're ever going to get to a point in the sport where we just have to say, this is too crazy? I don't know if I phrased that well, but the sort of specialized skills, do we need a separate category for those super highly specialized skills so that, the athletes that want to be training all of those ridiculous things have an avenue to show that off, as opposed to, somebody who might just want to be involved and go to a competition and know what they need to train for?
Well, I definitely think it's an interesting question that has a lot of different avenues to explore for it. When it comes to the high level skills that you're seeing from Instagram, some, not all of them, but some are I attempted this 1,000 times and got it once and then threw it up there. Which is in terms of the ability to put that in a course, is the chances are probably no. It's it's not going to make its way into a course because it's just too the clear percentage on it is just too crazy. One of the things that we try to do with our clear percentage or our obstacles is we try to look at courses that are if you're a really talented ninja, you should be able to get this the majority of the time. So in terms of those skills, I feel like they definitely have a place. But I think it's a little bit more in kind of a specialized, a skill competition where it's it's not you're stringing this all together. You're throwing this into a course and you're saying okay, hit this 16-foot lache or hit these consecutive laches or do the crazy bar helicopter move for whatever reason. It's I think when you start looking at that, then you start talking about these highly honed skills where it's it's okay to be this is a skill. Try this elite level skill, and if you can get it in your attempt, then great. More like a rock climbing problem where it's like it's really hard and you try to like tackle the problem, or even it opens up the door to conversations about like could there be like an NBA dunk contest version of whatever salmon ladder flying bar thing, and I think that there's definitely something that's there, especially as these athletes get these skills more honed. I can 100% see the potential for implementing something like that. But I think for now, I think course designers can breathe relatively easily, because I think a lot of the crazy stuff that you're seeing is still, more like, 1 in 100 tries, and it's not quite ready for the course. But give it a few years, and I think you're going to start seeing some of those moves being executed more consistently, and it's something that can be thrown into a very elite level course.
Yeah, and another thought with that, again, just from obstacle course racing experience, is different races kind of have different like personalities or experiences, and those are pretty well known among the community of, hey, if you do this race, it's going to be more obstacle based with some hard running too. Hey, if you do this one, it's basically like brute strength and running. And so like there's different characteristics of different races, and I feel like it would be similar with a gym. If I'm going to a competition at a gym, I might look up previous competitions that they've had and like, hey, what type of style is that course designer? What do they normally do? Just to learn a little bit of experience. And people that travel all the time and do competitions probably actually know the course designer and know their style and things like that. So I think that's something that, again, is kind of cool. You can kind of go to different gyms knowing like, okay, this is more their personality or characteristic type of a course versus another. And then you can challenge yourself and like, hey, I'm not as good as these. I should probably go to this gym because they tend to challenge you more in this, something like that.
Yeah, I think that's very true. And we see that a lot with some of the veteran like course designers and gym owners who've really been around a while, and they've already planned dozens and dozens and dozens of courses. Like we've seen some of their styles come out. So I think that's a really fair point, especially if you live somewhere where there's multiple gyms nearby. I kind of just have one last thought, and I'll close this up here in a couple of minutes, but it was occurring to me while we were talking that, if gyms do decide to go ahead and do a separate course for the females, we might see some gyms actually having like a separate female wave, because logistically, if they're having to change around the course and do a new setup, we could see them adding on a whole new wave instead of just integrating females in with possibly like longer time limit back and forth between like a male and female. I'm pretty sure in Ninjaworks you have the capability of doing that if someone's registered like as a female. So I guess I'm just wondering if you have any reaction to just the concept of kind of pulling females into a completely separate wave that would go before or after the males, depending on how they set it up. But I know in our seminar, we had some people who really hated that, and then some people who really liked that idea. So of course, it just kind of depends what people think. But I think the concern was that we didn't want to see gym kids like lose that camaraderie of, oh, at the gym, we all train together, but now when we compete, we're separated, which doesn't have to be a negative thing. But for some people, it was a concern, like, will this lose camaraderie, or will people just leave when theirs is over and not watch their friends?
So a few thoughts is, one, for us, like we have the Lab Rats team, and they do still have that camaraderie between different age groups, even though they're different waves too. And so I don't really feel like it should make that big of a difference. People are still going to want to watch their teammates or their friends. And obviously during COVID, it was a little more challenging. But I think in general, it won't make a huge difference. And then just some examples I think of in other sports is track. I know one of the concerns as people think about women having a separate wave versus men is like, oh, well, the women wave, like, well, not as many people want to watch the women wave. But it's like in track, they have back-to-back races, guys, then girls, then guys, then girls. And it's like, I want to tune in for everything. Most people want to tune in for everything. It's exciting. It's fun to watch. It's still the same event. And so unlike the NBA versus the WNBA, it's literally two separate events. I think when it's all the same event, you still have all the same people there around the same time. I don't feel like it'll create a huge difference. in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree with Michelle. I think the fact that even if there is a split, it'll most likely be back to back. I think most teammates will stick around and support their fellow lab rats or whatever other team is there. So I agree.
There you go. Very true. Awesome. Is there anything else before I close this out?
I feel like I would just add one more time that if you're reluctant to course changes, give it a try, and then send us feedback. Be one of the voices in the surveys. Let us know that you didn't like it, and more importantly, specifically why you didn't like it and what you think we could do differently or better, ultimately to provide the best possible experience. Because I'll just reiterate that we're here to serve the community and we want to do what's best for everybody. So let us know what you think we can do.
Yeah, and one thing I would add as well, I think, Kara, you and I kind of talked about this at one point, but in general, like, you want to help people gain confidence in a sport. You want to help people gain confidence in life and things like that. And I think part of this is to help people gain confidence and to help bring out more women. That's part of the goal. And so again, we'll be listening to feedback and stuff, but that's where our heart is, and hopefully people can see that.
Yeah, absolutely. I know nobody's trying to just make up something that's like, haha, take that. Now you're going to feel terrible at every competition. Yeah. No, that's not what we want. I know that's not what you guys want. So I just appreciate so much all of you coming on. Chris, Michelle, Mary, thank you so much for taking the time to really dive into some of these changes and talk about them more with us. Again, I'm sure we'll have more conversations about this as time goes on. But I just appreciate it, and I'm excited to see how this season goes. And I'm really curious and excited to see kind of the data that we can look at in hindsight by the end of the season and see how things have been going and what gyms try, what changes. So yeah, if anybody else out there listening has more questions or other feedback that we did not cover today, definitely message us, message NNL, and we'd love to talk about it more. So
be strong, be you, be a ninja babe.